Today, the city of Melbourne tries for revitalization with a major riverfront park project. A Florida Today reporter watches as an alligator video becomes his top Hurricane Irma story, and we learn what happens when schools, cities, and businesses try working together. This is Brevard Watch, the news experience focused exclusively on Florida's Space Coast. This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. My thanks to Community Credit Union for sponsoring this program. My guests today are Cheryl, Public Information Officer for the City of Melbourne, and Florida Today reporter Rick Neale, who covers cities and is just back from some major hurricane assignments. Let's talk about what's news in your world. Cheryl, what are you working on today that people ought to know about?
Well, the biggest thing is we've got the latest new thing at Riverview Park, the farmers market that for years has been at the corner of US 1 and 192 is moving to Riverview Park, or excuse me, it has moved. It started there last Saturday, October 7th. So they've taken it from that parking lot and now they're down at our newly revitalized Riverview Park, which is just about a mile or so south of there on the river. And I'm sure we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. But they're expanding it a little bit. More
also
fresh
a way
produce.
To draw people there, correct?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of new amenities. They're going to have food trucks. You can go and have a nice cup of coffee, sit in one of our shaded pavilions. We've got this brand new spectacular playground where kids can run around while you're doing that. We've got a new trail. You can bring your dog and walk around and just have a great day. And so we're hoping that that'll be a big draw as the weather keeps getting nicer and people are looking for a great thing to do on a Saturday. And that'll be every Saturday from 10 to 3.
And your job as PIO is to spread the word, which you sort of just did, and we'll also come back on this project in just a minute. That's terrific. Rick Neale, what's cooking?
Well, I know the Riverview Park. I know I've been here since 2004, and there's a great deal of people who don't even know that park exists. But I mean, it is a large, 17, 18 acre, unused asset. So there are a lot of plans underway for that. For us at the paper, we're still kind of gearing down from Hurricane Irma coverage, obviously. So I know immediately after this meeting's over, I'm going across the street to the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization meeting. They're going to be talking about, they're having a presentation on potential tolls for the beach line, 528, and because there's going to be a future widening project extending from 520 to Port Canaveral. So, and they may put in a future service plaza. They're even talking about, the Bright Line rail service for the future. That would be extended to the port as well. So,
wow, interesting.
Well,
they can do that. It pays for the road, and also a lot of people don't even know how many tolls they're paying because it goes right onto that little Easy Pass these days. At least that's what I have.
Yeah, you get your credit card statement later, and you're like, oh, I did a lot of driving, so to speak. So,
Hurricane Irma, one of the biggest stories to hit Brevard County in 2017. Both of you played completely different roles in how Brevard County coped with that storm. Cheryl, we've been in recovery mode for some time. You've had a chance to kind of size up how things are going. How's Melbourne doing?
Melbourne's recovering. But Irma was just a tremendous storm of historic proportions, really. As we all know, we had a lot of rain Labor Day weekend right before it hit. The preliminary estimate from the Brevard County Emergency Management was that we had 15 inches of rain during Irma in 12 hours. And I think, for comparison's sake, Tropical Storm Faye was 27 inches in 72 hours. So it's something like we had half the rain in a sixth of the time. And we already had, wet ground and filled up stormwater system. And then, of course, we had this follow-on low that happened last week and added a whole lot more rain. I think in some parts, I think you reported more than 10 inches, right, Rick? And,
yes.
I heard anecdotally from people with rain gauges beachside, 12, 15 inches. So the system's just overloaded. So recovering from that's going to take some time because what happens is all of the ditches and the stormwater ponds fill up, but also the Indian River Lagoon is very high and the St. Johns River is extremely high. And so this water has to go somewhere and has nowhere to go right now. Or let me put it this way, it goes very slowly. So one of the things that's a challenge is, kind of waiting that out and hoping we don't get more rain. So these neighborhoods that have been kind of on the edge or have had some flooding, they may still get some street flooding if we have another big rain event while we watch that all go down. We're trying to encourage everybody who's got debris out. As we are picking it up, we're about 50% of the way of getting all of our debris collected in the city of Melbourne. I don't know countywide how that's going, but this would apply to everybody. Don't put your debris in the road because that stuff can go into the storm drains and clog it. Please keep it on your lawn and just try to watch for those things. Our public works staff routinely goes out and checks all of our ditches and drains and makes sure that things are clear. Before the storm, they checked like all of them. I think it's 80 drainage ditches, 13 baffle boxes, just tremendous amounts of areas where water collects and where they check, just to make sure everything is flowing properly. So they're on top of that, but these huge rain events are a real concern.
I can chime in on that because that helps remind me. I did a story like maybe this past weekend. The National Weather Service has determined that September was missed by like this much, being the rainiest month on record. The rainiest was Tropical Storm Faye in August of 2008. I think around 29 inches grand total. We missed that by 0.12 of an inch.
Wow.
So that was Irma plus all these other rain events. And that does not include Sunday, October 1st. That's when, Indiana got 10.35 inches. A lot of these super saturated areas are,
There's just no place for it to go.
Yeah, the St. John's River, I know, was at a record crest as well. At the record or right next to?
Yeah, it was
So-
real close, from what I understand. So there are certain things we can't do, but there's a lot we can do. And so any kind of major rain event like this, our engineering and our public works staff, they go out, even just an afternoon thunderstorm that's been extremely high, and they try to make sure, did things work? Did they drain the way they could? Is there some sort of new engineering feature we can put in that would help? And so they're constantly analyzing that kind of thing and working with our county partners as well.
Rick, Neale, you had an interesting experience. You went to cover Hurricane Harvey in Houston,
Yes.
I believe with the pararescue teams or to cover them from Patrick Air Force Base. Then immediately came back and covered Hurricane Irma along with the rest of the team from Florida today.
Right, yeah. I was in Texas for a week. It was kind of the a second wave of reporters from the USA Today network converging after the flooding struck. And the 920th Rescue Wing, based at Patrick Air Force Base, they have the Pavehawk helicopters you see, going up and down the beach, and they've got the line that comes down and they pick someone up. I mean, everyone's seen that footage like from Hurricane Katrina and from Harvey and so forth. But they went to College Station, Texas, which is the home of Texas A&M. I spent 3 nights there. Actually went up on one of their missions for 6.5 hours in a Pavehawk, which was like amazing. But they ended up rescuing 235 people and 21 dogs and 5 cats. So
In
that
the
was-
same helicopter or just over the same?
They had a couple very busy they would basically fill the helicopter, head over to a drop-off point. Everyone gets out and then they go straight back up in the air because they
Wow.
were receiving they had a military communications base of sorts that they established at the airport in College Station. And they was working with Marines, Coast Guard, other private air operators as well. And they were receiving real-time 911 calls. So they were going back and forth. In some cases, they're texting the people. They're trying to get their locations. Because you
I
can
see.
tell when you are up in the helicopter, the flooding was so severe in a lot of the neighborhoods where you just see the rooftops. You have no idea what the addresses are, what road is this,
Right.
this sort of thing. So, so
Can you give me a landmark?
it was a lot of that sort of thing. So.
Can you give me a landmark that's still showing above the
Yeah.
water level?
Well, I went to downtown Houston for 3 days, and then they kind of pretty much pulled the plug on the assignment. They said, all right, it is time to head back because Irma is approaching. And then the day I was flying back is when Irma hit 185 miles an hour off in the Caribbean. And then, I was pretty much reporting nonstop on that for the next 2-3 weeks or so. So I've got this is from a Dave Berman story from Florida Today. This actually came out last week, comparing Hurricane Matthew last October, which is the Cat 4 that was it was supposed to be our hurricane hit.
Right.
And then Irma, obviously, it came through the Keys, and basically the eye stuck to the Gulf side. However, with Irma, we Brevard County businesses and homes sustained $157 million in damages.
Wow.
Which is 4 times the amount for Matthew. So they've got that's still a ballpark estimate that could go up. So more than 7,100 homes and businesses from Irma compared to less than 1,700 for Matthew.
So just as probably the city of Melbourne begins to get the public facilities back to normal, suddenly it's going to be the insurance companies that need to come in and take that next step to help the private property owners get their properties back in working order, and then finally get back to some level of normalcy for a lot of people. Let's talk about Parks and Recreation, Cheryl. I know that's a big way that the city of Melbourne interacts with Brevard Public School System. I know you've got some initiatives going on. Tell us about them.
Sure, absolutely. Our Parks and Recreation Department started a couple of years ago with a big push, a big rebranding push. They went from calling themselves Leisure Services to Play Melbourne Parks and Recreation, to give people more of an idea of how many fun things you can do and how active our Parks and Recreation offerings are. We have multiple recreation centers, we have tons of parks. There's just lots to do, but we weren't shouting about it. We weren't talking about it so much. And another thing we wanted to do was to really get the business community involved and to engage with our other partners, like Health First and Brevard Public Schools. So we brought in a really amazing, dynamic marketing and sponsorship outreach person, and she, along with our director and our other staff there, just did a tremendous job rebranding the department, signage, T-shirts, all those kinds of things. They did a video showcasing, everything from foot golf to Pee Wee basketball to, just having a nice picnic in one of our parks, all the different things you can do. A big push of this, of course, as we talked about earlier, was Riverview Park. As Rick mentioned, it's a park people just drive by. It's parallel to US 1, but it's not on US 1. It doesn't have US 1 frontage, so it's really easy to just miss it. And what can happen with public spaces, nice, beautiful, open public spaces that go underutilized, they kind of get abandoned to neglect and really crime and some other things that can go on in these big open spaces that no one's paying attention to. So a few years back, our city council approved a big master plan to just totally revitalize that park. And we're beginning to see in the past couple of years a lot of these pieces come together. One is this, it's a playground, but really it's a play structure is what they like to call it, because it's this unique, very elaborate, colorful, fun playground for kids to come play on. So we tried to draw a lot of attention to the fact that opened up a year ago, and we had a public event, we talked to the press, and we did that. But we also wanted to give people a reason to keep coming back. And so the partnership, one of the many things that we've done with Brevard Public Schools is we've created this program called Playdate. And what this is, it's a structured field trip program where once a month a different group of elementary school children comes from a different school, and they come and they play on the playground, and they play, like, our director likes to call it old school games like tag and things like that get the kids running around and having, a lot of fun outside. And then Health First partnered with us on this to provide a healthy lunch for the kids. So then they go and have lunch sponsored by Health First underneath one of our shaded pavilions. And this way we're getting the teachers, the children to know about this fun space where they can go. So hopefully they're going there, the kids are coming with their families on the weekends. We've also added these shade canopies for additional seating. We're going to be adding new restroom facilities. We've got this new trail. There's some other improvements still in the works, but it's taking some time. We're going after grant money and things like that. But the Playdate program's been great. Brevard Public School has been this amazing partner with that. And it's had a lot of success. Usage of the park has really skyrocketed, and we're hoping with the addition of the farmers market, they'll just bring more people there. And because it truly is, as Rick mentioned, it's a hidden gem. It's a beautiful 16-acre park on the river. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's a great place for people to go, but they need to know to go there because it's not flashing lights there on US 1.
It's good to see the city of Melbourne taking better advantage of its waterfront. It seems like a
Yeah.
lot of cities in Brevard County just didn't do that for a long time. And so here you're using the park that's been there forever and just putting money into your actual property that you have and trying to make it do better. And there's, I believe, the Groundswell tech startup is right there too, and they might do a lot for South Melbourne.
Certainly, and that's, I was with the Parks and Rec aspect and with Groundswell, which is like right next door to Riverview Park, I just covered, kind of switching gears a bit, but over in West Melbourne, they're planning a $750,000 skateboard park. Now, Groundswell used to be the park.
Yes.
Which is an indoor skate park.
Some of the graffiti's still inside where the
It
coders
is.
are working
It's
on
really
their-
cool. I was actually there when, this had to have been like 2007 or so, when the park was being built. I went on a little tour through there, and they were doing the graffiti. Like, some people were doing that, others were building like the wooden ramps and that kind of thing. But with the park going, they closed like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and Graffiti Skate Zone shut down in Palm Bay as well. So West Melbourne,
moving to
it's-
corner the market.
well, I guess so. At least they're spending up to $750,000. Team Payne, which also did the skate parks in Cocoa Beach and Satellite Beach, they're handling the design of all the various. It's going to be like a flow bowl. It's like the bowl being like the traditional swimming pool sort of thing. I'm not a skateboarder, but it has a lot of aspects, I guess, to make it like a lot more user friendly for different levels of skaters than just simply a swimming pool. And there's going to be a large scale street course as well. But they may break ground on that and start construction in December, at least. And that'd be like a 3-month period. But that would be drawing skateboarders from West Melbourne, obviously, Palm Bay, and Melbourne. And that's going to be located on Minton Road at West Melbourne Community Park, which is, it'll be directly south of the Space Coast Field of Dreams, special needs athletic complex that maybe opened like 2 years ago or so.
They're really putting together a nucleus there in West Melbourne of recreation, service, family kind of activity. And it's kind of cool to see some things coming together in Melbourne too.
Yeah, and because it's a great thing. We tend to not think about parks and recreation activities as a way to get involved in your city, but it absolutely is. The more you use these spaces, the more connected you are. If they're enlivened with people, they're not going to be abandoned to neglect and crime. They make the neighborhood better. It's great having more to do in a city. And as we try to attract more companies and more young professionals and families to Melbourne and to our businesses, these are draws. Absolutely what Rick's talking about and the kind of work we're doing. We see that all the time. Our Play Melbourne video, though it showcases fun things to do around the city, it's been shared with realtors. The Economic Development Department at the city has used it. It's a way of showcasing how great the city is through the fun things.
Rick, I'm going to use you as a barometer on that topic a little bit here. Jaron Eisenberg from downtown Melbourne recently said that when you do things in schools, for example, to train them in great careers, aviation maintenance is something that's coming up now. We've got welding and manufacturing going on at some of the schools in Palm Bay. Then people, if they can have great jobs and careers and work at some of the aviation and aerospace types of companies in Melbourne, they can stay. They don't have to leave downtown or the cities to go pursue their dreams. You're practically the unofficial mayor of downtown Melbourne. You live down there, you talk to everybody. Have you seen over in the years that you've been living in Melbourne and spending time a change? Are you seeing more local people stay, or is it still kind of people coming from outside that are taking advantage of the dining and the entertainment downtown?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think the downtown is drawing both locals and people from, I guess, when I say out of the area, I'm saying like, Vieira, Suntree, Rockledge, this sort of thing. That's just through, I think, just through the general growth that's taking place there.
We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Take the BPS CCU High School Mascot debit card anywhere, anyplace. Show your school spirit every time you use your card. Get your favorite BPS CCU High School Mascot debit card today by visiting any CCU branch. Learn more at ccuflorida.org/spirit.
Hi there, I'm Brevard School Superintendent Desmond Blackburn, and I need to hear from you. Whether you're a parent, school employee, business person, or a senior in our amazing Legacy Club, at a town hall meeting near you, I'll share the latest on how our schools are performing based on what the community has already asked for. Then I'll ask you, what's next? What does your child or grandchild need most to succeed? What does your business or agency need in a high school graduate? How can our schools better support quality of life in your neighborhood? I will listen carefully, and I know your school board will too.
Hi, I'm Misty Belford, your school board member for North Brevard. To better serve you, we need to know your needs, questions, and concerns. Please join me and Superintendent Blackburn for a special town hall meeting I'll be hosting at Titusville High School. Mark your calendar for November 2nd from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. I hope to see you there.
Well, we know good schools are important to strong communities. For example, we just learned that 64 out of 82 Brevard schools won the state's 5-star award for community engagement. That includes business partnerships and volunteerism. And here's what Jaron Eisenberg, director of Downtown Melbourne, told Brevard Watch about how education can impact a city center's development.
So we recently fundraised and did a video that it's all right here in downtown Melbourne. And we did that so that we could give it to Embraer and Northrop Grumman and Harris and say, hey, use this to show off Melbourne. Let us help you do, what you need to do, because I don't want to live in a Melbourne without a Northrop Grumman or Embraer. That's not an exciting place to be like it is now. So we want to support the growth at the airport and Northrop Grumman and help them give the tools so that they can attract that talent, but then keep that talent here in Melbourne.
Matt, this just occurred to me, but it seems like Brevard Public Schools might be one of the biggest hiring entities when it comes to young professionals in Brevard County.
It is.
Are we overlooking teachers? We go out and we recruit all over the country to bring 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds down for their first jobs teaching in Brevard Public Schools. Are we plugging them into things like the young professionals and the downtowns in Brevard County?
No, we're not, and we need to be. There's a definite, what she was just saying, there's two things that the site developers from companies look at is, one, what are you doing for the millennials, because that's the majority of their workforce. The other thing is career and technical. For teachers, when they're looking to come to a place, they want to know what's going on downtown, what's going on here and there. We have a small underfunded group that we're about to expand for retention and recruitment, that's about to start those processes, but we have not in the past said, hey guys, come to Brevard, because what we've never gone outside of our area to recruit. And now we're finding, in order to be competitive with a lot of the other school districts, we actually have to get out there to do that. That creates a whole nother list of things that we need to do, and that's what we're evaluating. But I think that this is an area that we really could grow as a school district, is to go ahead and do that. And then a lot of the things that she's doing down there, you could replicate and do with the school systems too.
Well, we're back with Florida Today reporter Rick Neale and Melbourne Public Information Officer Cheryl Mall. A couple of Melbourne police issues. When I recently spoke with Mike McNeese, the city manager of Melbourne, he explained how the police department's outlook on downtown, for example, had changed with the times. At first, there was as the nightlife really grew in Melbourne, there were problems. There were fights. There were people downtown late. The city of Melbourne was initially reacting with overtime and seeing that as an additional burden, but then they realized this is a good problem to have. People want to be here downtown, so let's make it the normal thing. They changed up some shifts. The police department changed its tactics. There hasn't been a lot of news coming out of downtown. Is no news good news, Rick? What were your observations?
I would say so. At the city council level, for a while they were having multiple conversations, asking the police chief all these various questions, what can be done, various complaints coming in about a couple establishments and so forth, but that's pretty much off the radar screen. So, maybe it's a cyclical thing, maybe, I'm not sure.
Well, I've had nothing but a good time down there, and I've never felt unsafe. So let's check that box as good for now.
Right.
Cheryl,
right.
Something more proactive. Police department working with kids, streets, trying to keep, what's up?
So our police department has launched something called Operation Street Smart. There's been an alarming rise in the number of pedestrian, bicycle, car interactions and accidents and fatalities in some cases, especially around the schools. At the start of this school year, we had 2 accidents, one at a middle school with a child on a bike, and one in front of O'Galley High School. It was a pedestrian student hit by a car, and these children were both injured. And we are noticing a lot of this is just distracted driving, kind of the usual things you would think of, looking at your phone, not paying attention to where you're going. But we're finding that this is happening with the pedestrians, the cyclists, and the drivers all at once. So what we're doing is we're working in 3 ways: stepped up enforcement, more outreach and education, and also looking at engineering fixes, if there are any. So our officers are out at the different schools and intersections where there have been problems, and they're stopping people and saying, hey, do you see what you're doing? This is dangerous. This is why. They're doing a lot of outreach in the schools themselves, and you might know a little more about that, Matt, like what they're doing specifically there with the principals and the teachers, but they're trying to get more education going at the schools about this is how you safely cross a crosswalk on a bike. This is how you do it as a pedestrian. This is what you want to do in the car loop, Mom and Dad, when you come pick up the kids. We actually did have a couple of principals call our police department and say, hey, what can you do? We've got these parents not paying attention in the car loops, which is a very dangerous place to be distracted. But of course, people are busy. They're
Right.
trying to do a lot of things all at once, but we're trying to emphasize safety, 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 because we can't have children getting hurt. So they've launched that. They launched it kind of around the time of the start of the school year, which was also the time of schools closing with the hurricanes and all. So they're back in full swing with that. And we'll probably be doing a big public education outreach push around Halloween, because you've got all this distracted driving going on, distracted walking, distracted biking, and you're going to add costumes and darkness to that pretty soon with trick-or-treating. So we're just asking everybody to please take a moment, look around, be observant, just really, really think about what you're doing while you're driving and while you're walking and while you're biking.
That's also the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. That's been a major push for those guys, in recent months. I know Palm Bay, they've had numerous students who have been struck by vehicles, whether they're bicycling, whether they're pedestrians or not. So, and a lot of that is, like you mentioned, distracted driving and just awareness. That's the main, I think the main way that they can try to combat it is through public education. I know I actually did a story, I requested database information for Brevard County's crashes within recent year, maybe a 5-year span or so, involving school-age kids, and they were pretty much checkered all around the board, and there were no apparent patterns. A lot of cases, the driver is at fault. Other cases, it's the kid that's at fault. And a lot of what makes it even worse is practically none of those accidents actually happen at a guarded crosswalk. It's all throughout the residential neighborhoods, whether you're driving past commercial plazas, going through other intersections. It's a very difficult problem to tackle.
Yeah, and absolutely, it's been everybody. It hasn't just been drivers or just cyclists. I mean, we had one case where a child was hit, but he was riding his bike the wrong way down the street. Those kind of things. And thanks for mentioning the Transportation Planning Organization, because they're a big partner for us too. We're working with them, and they do a great job with education and outreach. And this is absolutely a partnership project with them, and it affects all of us. It's not just a City of Melbourne issue. It's everywhere.
Right. I remember there was a tragic case last year in Palm Bay. I believe it was an Odyssey Charter School student who was hit by a car, unfortunately, and killed. Since then, City of Palm Bay, I believe, has gone and gotten a grant from the University of South Florida to step up and increase patrols in schools areas. And we'll see what kind of results we get from that, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Right.
Rick, you had a story that just came out about the Green Gables, historic house near downtown Melbourne. It's off of US 1, for anybody who hasn't been there. They had an ambitious fundraising goal to keep that house from the wrecking ball, or I guess the Caterpillar tractor, as places get demolished these days. What's the latest?
Well, the latest, as of, I believe it was August when I wrote that story, but they launched a campaign. They need roughly $800,000, the way they put it, because they estimate it'll be $750,000 to buy the property, and roughly $50,000 in closing costs and other charges. So they've put together a campaign. They're asking 8,000 people to donate $100. So, and I know as of, it was, right around August, that time frame or so forth, they'd really only, gathered like $32,000.
Uh-oh.
So they've got a ways to go, at least as far as that goes.
So they may have
the
reached
information's
that
available
point.
online and so forth, but they're looking at a December 31st deadline, in which, that's the deadline in which the owners of the property.
An old historic family,
Could-
or
yeah,
at least ancestors of one.
Yes, they could just drop the deal, or maybe they'll give them the nonprofit group an extension, or they could just simply sell the property, to a developer who would potentially knock the house down, put up some condos or a commercial property of some kind, So they've got a ways to go.
Well, I've toured the place. It's
Yeah.
really interesting, and it's a really interesting location too. There's a bluff over the Indian River that you don't really expect to see, but if you walk to the edge of that property, you look way down into the water, and it's absolutely cool to see how you can kind of get a sense of what things must have been like, because that river bank there is kind of, I don't want to use the word pristine, but it's sandier. It's not the same as you see around some of the canals, and you can just picture what it must have been like in the day when that Indian River was the highway that people used to come up and down and make the harbor city the harbor city.
There are a lot of large trees there and so forth, and a lot of those homes along Riverview Drive, the front of the homes faces the river. It's the backs they put in the road later on. So that's kind of, I guess, back 100 years ago or so, they had a horse trail going between the homes and the river, and that led down to Front Street, which is where the historic downtown was before it burned up. So,
Cheryl, I know you haven't been engaged in the specific project, but just generally speaking, City of Melbourne friendly to historic preservation?
Oh, of course,
Is
we
it-
have a historic preservation, wait, I'm sorry, it changed, a historic architectural,
Like a
historic
review
architectural
board,
review-
they-
yeah,
it's
yeah.
2 boards in one.
Yeah, it was
Right.
the Historical Preservation Board and then the Architectural Review Board, and they merged last year, and I apologize for not remembering the name off. It's the HARB.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we have an active board. We have a listing of historic properties. We try to help people go through the historic designation process.
Well, I know one of the big historic preservation issues in downtown Melbourne recently was that piece of what was old Melbourne High School that was next door to the Henniger Center that was ultimately demolished to make way for a new modern 8-story apartment building, the Highline apartment building. Rick, you've been kind of
Right.
following development down there. What do you know about it?
Well, I just called the developer, Sam Zimmerman, just, in anticipation of this TV show. And he says, as far as updates go, if all goes well, he may break ground right around the new year for the project. And right now, the status of it was approved by City Council back in March, I believe, the deal. And it's like I've got it written down here somewhere. It's like roughly a $30 million project in partnership with the city. Right now, the status is they're putting engineering blueprints and drawings back and forth with City Hall. It's the process that they're working through so we can actually get his building permits approved.
I see.
So they're still in the midst of that, and that goes on for months typically with something this complex. It's 8 stories high, 171 apartments, with a 2nd-story swimming pool. And it's got parking underneath and so forth. And that project also includes the redevelopment of the old Mel High parking lot, which you'd enter off of Mel Ave.
It's kind of a gravel lot right now. Off of
Gravel, grass, mud, that sort of thing. So that's going to be all paved with, I think it'll be about 175 spaces, as I recall, with lighting and landscaping. And there will be a 6 or 8 foot wide, public pathway. So you'll be able to get to New Haven Avenue from that parking lot, past the apartment project. So.
Well, when we come back, I'm going to ask our experts in the studio here what their favorite place to go is in Melbourne.
Take the BPS CCU High School Mascot Debit Card anywhere, anyplace. Show your school spirit every time you use your card. Get your favorite BPS CCU High School Mascot Debit Card today by visiting any CCU branch. Learn more at ccuflorida.org/spirit.
Hi there, I'm Brevard School Superintendent Desmond Blackburn, and I need to hear from you. Whether you're a parent, school employee, business person, or a senior in our amazing Legacy Club. At a town hall meeting near you, I'll share the latest on how our schools are performing based on what the community has already asked for. Then I'll ask you, what's next? What does your child or grandchild need most to succeed? What does your business or agency need in a high school graduate? How can our schools better support quality of life in your neighborhood? I will listen carefully, and I know your school board will too.
Hi, I'm Misty Belford, your school board member for North Brevard. To better serve you, we need to know your needs, questions, and concerns. Please join me and Superintendent Blackburn for a special town hall meeting I'll be hosting at Titusville High School. Mark your calendar for November 2nd from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. I hope to see you there.
This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. Coming up, I have more questions for Florida Today reporter Rick Neale and Melbourne Public Information Officer Cheryl Mall. But first, the Melbourne City Council decided to stop subsidizing parades that might feature the Confederate flag. Earlier on Brevard Watch, radio host Bill Mick and Florida Today's Eye on Brevard host Rob Landers debated whether that was the right thing to do. Watch. Now let's talk about a story going on in Melbourne with the Confederate flag. Looks like they might have reached a compromise regarding their parades. City Council voted, I think it was pretty close, 4-3, to not fund parades through downtown anymore. I think it was only about $2,000 per parade, because they might have the Confederate flag on display and they don't want to be seen as endorsing it. Is that the right compromise? Let's start with Bill.
It's the right fiscal thing to do. I like the move by council to, in what appears to be tough budget times coming for them, to eliminate these expenditures. And while the 4th of July parade and the, Memorial Day or Veterans Day parade was like $2,000 per, the Melbourne Light Parade cost them another $7,000. So that's not a lot of money when you talk government budgets, but on the other hand, if you're going to start being fiscally responsible, the idea is don't spend money you don't need to spend on things you shouldn't be spending it on in the first place. There are ample opportunities for people like, maybe the mayor who was in favor of this. What's the Thanksgiving Day parade everybody watches? Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. Meehan's Melbourne Light Parade. There you go. There's the bring the money, Mayor. Put your money where your vote is. Let's do that.
Let's see a couple of big inflatables for Brevard County with that. Rob, what do you think?
Well, $7,000 is a lot for a parade. For the city to expend on the parade, especially when you have a road like Babcock Street that is in the condition it's in. I think it's a good move for the city. The nonprofits, the Confederate flag withstanding, the nonprofits could probably do a better job of vetting the people they're letting into their parades as well. The only flag from the Confederacy that really matters is the white flag of surrender. So I'm kind of glad that Melbourne is at least taking steps to eliminate the flag from parades and, making sure that people don't get their feelers hurt.
Why was it not the blow up this time with people driving their big trucks down 192, cramming into the council chambers to stand up for the flag, or vice versa?
This meeting happened preemptively. This motion was made before the September 14th planned protest by the anti-Confederate flag folks. And as much as I like my buddy Rob, that flag is a part of American history, not just the Confederacy. Those states were reintegrated into the United States, and the fabric of our country is not always pretty. There are nits and picks in it, and it's part of the history. And if we don't keep it and learn from it, we've got a problem coming again, and we're starting to see it as these rabble-rousers start coming in saying, we want to eliminate this. Look at what they're doing, desecrating statues across the country right now. And again, not all of our history is pretty, but it's history we've learned from, and we came out a better country because of it. Let's not forget that and those people who fought there.
And I will say that my good friend Bill Mick is absolutely right, that it is part of our history. And I used to take field trips when I was in elementary school to museums where I learned a lot about history, which is where those artifacts and relics from the past that were symbols that represented oppression of a great number of people, that's where they belong, in a museum. They don't belong flying in a parade celebrating our independence or celebrating the holiday season. They belong in a museum.
I agree on the holiday season part. There's a purpose for that. We call it Christmas, and let's have a Christmas parade. We'll go with that. But are we going to eliminate Gettysburg? Are we going to eliminate other centers of remembrances of the Civil War? You go to Gettysburg, you can buy Union hats, you can buy Confederate hats, you can buy the uniforms, you can buy the memorabilia, and we remember that history because it made us who we are. That flag that the sons of Confederate veterans are carrying down, you don't like the flag, turn your back. Walk into the office supply store and buy your ink pen supply for the next week, or go into one of the restaurants or pubs and have yourself a drink while that part is happening. There's nothing wrong with that flag being presented. This was not the issue. This issue is people trying to elevate one element of society over another, and I'm glad City Council thwarted it by saying, look, we're just not going to fund any parades. Now, the last time that happened, it was the Puerto Rican Day Parade in Palm Bay, and the United Third Reich decided they were going to sue the city of Palm Bay to get their money so they could fly the Puerto Rican parade and have that event, because they were entitled to city money somehow. Yet the wife of the founder of United Third Reich has decided we need to eliminate parades. Okay, let's go with that. Eliminate them all.
For the benefit of our viewers who don't know this, United Third Bridge is the organization that stands up for
like I said,
Puerto
United
Rican
Third
history.
Reich, yeah.
Well, Teresa Lopez is the one that introduced this measure, I believe, and she was
Paul Alfrey did.
Paul Alfrey
She
did.
did vote for it, though. She tried to introduce it a couple years ago.
I think the thing about flags is that the symbol means something different in the eye of the beholder. And I think with this symbol, it's very, very clear that there are some people who believe that it stands for just rebellion and part of, being a Southerner, and there are other people who see it as part of the actual history of the Confederate States and slavery and a war to defend slavery. As long as a significant portion of your taxpayers are people who see it that way, as it's an offensive racist symbol and slavery, you probably should not spend public dollars on something that represents them as well. So compromise seemed like it was important to try to achieve here.
Correct. I like it from the fiscal side. By the way, time for the red bars to come off the Florida flag then. Let's talk that.
Let's move on.
Let's talk that. Let's talk that. I mean, seriously, Bill, you and I have known each other for several years.
Sure.
And have done shows with Matt in the past.
Yeah.
I know that you are West by God, Virginia through and through. Yeah. What you may not know about me is I grew up in Mississippi. I grew up in Columbus, Mississippi, where both northern and southern soldiers were tended to their medical needs were tended to, which is why the antebellum homes in Columbus, Mississippi still stand. They didn't bomb that city. I grew up in a high school where the Confederate was our school mascot. The stars and bars have been part of my life since I was 2 years old. It's time for them to go in a museum. It is. It's time for them to go in a museum. And you can't tell me that you honestly cannot tell me that you don't understand the venom and the hate towards that flag, when the venom and the hate from that flag is so blatantly displayed in places like Charlottesville, like it was 2 weeks ago, alongside the Nazi flag.
I'm not responsible for how those people perceive it.
You're not responsible for how it's perceived, but you are the one who just sat here and called United Third Bridge the United Third Reich.
Sure. What are they trying to do? Impose their will on everyone else. Nobody imposing their will by carrying a flag down that remembers the history of this country.
This is Brevard Watch, powered by Community Credit Union. I'm Matt Reed. We'll talk more in just a moment with Florida Today reporter Rick Neale and Melbourne Public Information Officer Cheryl Mall. But first, a look at how government, schools, and the Space Coast economy all interact. Earlier on Brevard Watch, I asked County Commissioner Rita Pritchett and WeVenture Executive Director Erica Lemp this. If they could improve one thing about Brevard Public Schools, what would it be?
It's not so much a change, but it's a continuation of some of these really great things that we've got going on in terms of getting kids excited about STEM fields. So many of these new businesses that we have coming in are STEM related. And so just looking at some non-traditional fields, things that haven't existed before, jobs that don't even exist yet. And I think that's a big thing, is that there's jobs out there that don't exist yet that these kids are going to need to be able to fill. And so getting them, and they're going to be creating a lot of these jobs, actually, if we think about it in terms of entrepreneurship, as I do. There's some great maker spaces that were made available through a grant from Northrop Grumman in the south end of the county. I got a chance to go and tour those. Seeing these kids get so excited about creating things and looking at the science of stuff and just seeing how these different connections are made was great. And it's that opportunity to get excited. And then I got to tour a school up in Titusville, actually, where they had done a CSI project on a classroom grant through the Schools Foundation. And again, it's just getting kids excited about stuff. I remember when I was in elementary school, and just the things that made me want to do the things that I'm doing now are the experiential learning activities. And I think that the more that we can increase that, the more that we can make that commonplace within the classroom, the better we're going to be. This is a digital group of kids that are growing up now, and if we can give them the opportunity to get hands-on with things, it's going to make them more well prepared. in the workforce and the jobs that they're going to be taking later on. It's just going to make them more well-rounded individuals, and I think that we owe it to them to be able to do that kind of thing.
Rita?
I would like to see a little bit more focus being moved into the areas where kids can get the hand-on training for different fields they can go into. Not every child's made to go to college. You know, I raised 6 kids and I realize this, but you know, they're good with other aspects. And so if we could get them trained into something that interests them so they can get right out there and get busy with their career, I mean, you still make a good living and without having to have a 4-year or 6-year degree. And actually some of those degrees aren't even able to provide jobs. So I think just figuring out what the child's going to be good at and finding a way to train them in it. I do see us going more into a computer age, and so maybe some online courses or online studies. I think the school system's already utilizing that. But I have to tell you, I've raised all my kids in Brevard County schools. I grew up in them. My grandchildren are in them, and I think it's the best schools in the state. I think we have an excellent school system, and my family has gotten a great education here in Brevard.
Rick and Cheryl, let's give some people some fun news they can use. What's your favorite place to go and spend some time when you're in Melbourne? Rick, start with you.
Mine is 905 Cafe. I was there this morning, as a matter of fact. So, I mean, I love the coffee, and I work there all the time. So I've got my laptop, and
Oh, I was going to say, are you moonlighting as a barista or something like that?
I have extra money on the side, sure, you know. And I also I buy books from either Amazon or Molly Mutt thrift store downtown. You know, buy them cheap, and I read them on the weekends down there. So
905 Cafe.
Uh-huh.
Cheryl, how about you?
I'd have to say downtown yoga.
You can get the yoga done.
yeah.
You go to work, nice stressful day at City Hall, then just go and namaste.
Indeed, they've got excellent teachers and a wide variety of types of classes, and it's just a really nice space. So, and I'm just grateful that it's near my office. Yeah.
do you go to Sun Shop afterwards as well, since you're right there? Or?
No, I go home and eat a healthy meal.
Gotcha.
Well, it's not my favorite place yet because I don't believe that it's open, but I am kind of looking forward to the new country and western live music venue that's going to be down off of New Haven there. I forgot what it's called, something Saloon or
Hurricane Creek Saloon.
Hurricane Creek Saloon. It's got a lot of potential in that place, and I think it could be a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, or maybe not, Rick Neale, you seem to be the go-to guy at Florida Today when it comes to animal stories. Manatees that washed ashore sometime during the storm, and a dentist's front office in Melbourne. There was an alligator downtown.
Uh-huh.
I believe not too terribly long ago, there was a shark in a pond in Indian Harbor Beach that was...
Oh, that was like 4 years ago.
Was it? That was a vigil
a-
for some time that really
they have
put
a
your
fight-
animal reporting on the map.
They have a 5K race now for it's the Shark in the Park 5K because they had it was a like 4-foot long bull shark. Apparently, they're assuming some kids caught it and like in the river or ocean, and then just like as a prank dumped it into the pond at Gleason Park. So people started having shark sightings there, and it's like what? But it turned out there was like news helicopters. There were hundreds of spectators because they had these trappers who went on a shark capture mission. They're throwing explosives into the water. They're trying to fish. They're using nets, boats, and turns out it's another guy altogether threw a cast net off the pier there and pulled it in. So, but they did find it did have a fish hook in its mouth. So that's what they assumed that it was like kids screwing around.
And
threw
I
it in.
think
it was
recently
returned to the river.
there was a story, I don't know whose video it was, about an alligator right downtown, or it seemed like it in
That
Melbourne.
was during the. I saw that on Facebook during Irma. I don't even. Or I saw a photo of it somehow. I got a hold of Cheryl and I said, "Hey, this is did a city employee like a firefighter or something shoot this video?" Turns out that was the case. So we just posted that online. It's like a 9-second video or so. Turns out that is of all the things I did for the hurricanes, that was the most viral. I mean, it went around the world. All this. It was used like Washington Post, I believe Newsweek. These other publications kind of did stories about, Florida wildlife gone wild, during the hurricanes and snakes and from Hurricane Harvey and stuff. So they used that and featured it in there. So.
Cheryl, do stories like that drive you crazy? I mean, you're working on some sort of initiative, and all of a sudden your phone starts blowing up, and it's reporters from TV stations saying, "Where's the alligator? Can you
Random.
confirm there was an alligator?"
Yeah. Yes.
That was me. I was doing it.
You know, as a native Floridian and someone who's been through storms and who loves my state and loves our nature and wildlife and all of that, I just get disappointed when the story is the freak show of Florida. You know, an alligator in the street, or you know, the latest crazy thing that some weird person who moved here did.
It is Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. You know, as years have gone on, I've accepted that that's just part of it. But we have a tremendous state. We have tremendous people here doing tremendous things, and yeah, I wish that the highlights were on that. But I also understand we live in a world where it's, wow, look at that, you know, on your phone or on TV really quickly, and it's a soundbite world that those kinds of things play very well.
Yeah, and that's the kind
Yeah.
of thing. Also, looking at the Florida State website during the week before, week of, or I mean, it's just a barrage of bad news. I mean, a deluge of all these damage headlines and evacuations and all this stuff. I think people, whether it's a couple manatees, 6 manatees that get washed up in someone's backyard in Crane Creek, or like there's a message in a bottle that washed ashore in Indialantic as well. And I also wrote about that ghost ship that
Yes.
it washed ashore at Spencer Holland
The
South.
yacht that suddenly appeared
Yeah,
in
from out of
Melbourne
nowhere
Beach.
from the hurricane. So I think people gravitate to those sorts of stories. I mean, a lot of it is simply just like flipping on your phone, wow, that kind of thing. But it's also, it's a completely different, I don't know, I don't want to say the happy side of a hurricane by any means. But, at least it's a different angle that's
It's
not
part of the way
negative.
people cope.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheryl, what's the biggest challenge for you as a PIO in getting out the story of the city?
Well, multiple channels, of course, and I mean, you can speak to this as the spokesperson for and the head of communications for the school system. You're competing with a lot of other distractions and all the entertainment choices and all the news choices and all the different things people could be watching. So you try to go where they are. You try to apply best practices. Who's your audience? Who you're trying to reach? Well, what are they looking at? What are they reading? Where are they in the day when you're trying to get them with that message and trying to make sure that you get the right message to them at the right time when they're ready to receive it. And kind of just following those best practices you learn in communications, just working in this field for a long, long time. How much information do you give them to make sure they have the clear picture, but that you're not giving them so many details that they're just lost and they're not paying attention anymore and they're not getting to the essence of your message? That's a balance and a challenge, and I imagine that it's true for anyone working with the news to share or warnings to get out, or even just something as simple as schools are open today or schools are closed. This road is open, this road's closed. How do you make sure people know that? How do you get to that? So it's a challenge, but it's not new, to working in government. It's a challenge that all organizations face, whether they're trying to market bubble gum or they're trying to, issue warnings or things like that.
Yeah, I think personally, from covering, I've been here since 2004, like Melbourne City Hall and so forth, all of our city halls and governmental organizations, I think Facebook is the biggest difference maker as far as you guys getting your messages to the public, because, I mean, anyone who clicks like, on the various pages and so forth, whether it's school news from the city, city of Satellite Beach, Cocoa Beach, so forth, that way, when, messages spread online, I mean, before, like when I came here, it would be a PIO sending out a blast email.
Right.
And, some of those go in your clutter bin, whatever. Others, it's like, lost in the shuffle, I think social media is playing, it's playing
That the
enormous.
people there are there because they're interested and engaged in some level, and so that's a
Yeah.
go-to place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to do multiple channels because not everyone's on Facebook. And Facebook now, it used to be you could just log in and see anybody's public page, and that's not the case anymore. They want you to have an account. So you have to do it in multiple channels. But certainly things like Twitter for making sure we get through the clutter and get to reporters. I know reporters seem to like that, especially in an emergency like a shooting or something like that. They're not trying to call, and someone like me can't return, or you can't return like 80 calls all at once, but we can certainly say, hey, we're going to have a press conference at this time, and get that on Twitter, and everyone can know that right away because they can just get it easily.
Yeah, in a lot of
It's
cases.
multi-pronged.
Yeah, a lot of cases, the media then will simply, they just copy your tweet and spread that along too. So, I
Right.
mean, that's,
Right.
You know, it's like a self-feeding mechanism. You know, reporters in the field, like, say we're at the scene of a police standoff or something. You know, you have editors saying, well, what's going on? It's like, not much, who knows, you know, but when law enforcement is tweeting, you know,
At least
all
you're
these
getting those
updates.
small updates, and they're giving you
Right.
something that you can report in real time.
Yeah, and a lot of those, I mean, you know, whether it's, you know, a small difference in the tweeting and so forth, like, you know, what could be like small details could end up being, you know, pretty significant if it's talking about road closures, if it's talking about, you know, this neighborhood has to be evacuated now, or, you know, these sorts of things, so.
And big things like that, you don't have to worry so much about trying to keep pulling them in because they are in. It's the big story of the day, so people are watching and looking for those updates. Something like Riverview Park, as we were talking about earlier, yeah, we had a grand opening. We did messages on our website, Facebook, Twitter, the Play Melbourne's Facebook. We spread it out. We did advertising. We reached out to the media. We had Florida Today, Hometown News. I think News 13 covered it. So we covered all of that, made sure our council knew. We had a big public event, and hundreds of people came to that. That's not enough. So then we did this Playdate program, and you know that's not going to be enough. So things like, you know, having events and trying to. Oh, we also did a mural. We had a mural done at Riverview Park, partly to enhance it, but also to give people another reason to go there and to think about it. So it's never a one-time shot, and it's always multiple channels and keeping things fresh.
Rick Neale, fractured audience. How do you and sometimes smaller news organizations? You sometimes are the only person covering cities.
Yeah.
For Florida Today in Melbourne. How do you choose?
I mean, you have a limited amount of time and so forth, and that, you know, X amount of geographic area and so forth. I mean, I know that Florida Today, what we've been doing more of is teaming up as reporters to tackle a lot of these stories. And, you know, that's a lot more help. We can each take off small bites and, you know, rather than one person devoting a ton of time to that, you know. But I mean, it's a real challenge. I mean, it's been an ongoing challenge for years on end, you know, and it'll never end.
Well, that's our program. My thanks to Community Credit Union for making this program possible. Thanks also to our guests, Florida Today City and Alligator reporter Rick Neale, and Melbourne spokeswoman and Melbourne High School graduate Cheryl Mall. Go Bulldogs. Our producer, editor, and ace drone pilot is Mike Francisco. I'm Matt Reed. See you next time on Brevard Watch. Brevard Watch, the news experience focused exclusively on Florida's Space Coast.